who have supported them along the way. At this time, please silence all your electronic devices, and the ceremony will begin momentarily. I'd ask you now to please rise for the arrival of the official party. And please remain standing for the national anthem sung by Major Retired Allison Hartsville. And orient yourself, please, to the flag here behind the stage.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please be seated. Distinguished guests, family, friends, teammates, and all who have joined us in person or virtually, thank you for being here to honor 5 extraordinary service members whose combined service exceeds 120 years. Today is both a celebration and a reckoning. I'm Major General Tammy Smith, U.S. Army retired, and I'll be your MC today for this event. We gather today to recognize Colonel Bree Fram, United States Air Force, Commander Blake Dremen, United States Navy, Lieutenant Colonel Aaron Grazek, United States Air Force, Chief Petty Officer Jada McGuire, United States Coast Guard, and Sergeant First Class Catherine Schmid, United States Army. 5 leaders, 5 paths, 5 specialties, 1 unshakable truth, each served with exceptional skill, courage, and authenticity. This ceremony is unprecedented, not because their careers fell short in any way, but because they shine so brightly in the military that cast them aside as unworthy. For every one of them, there are thousands of other transgender service members who were denied the opportunity to even reach this moment of retirement, despite records that mark them as among the best of the best. To every LGBTQ and allied service member here today, and those watching from elsewhere, this ceremony is also yours. In the audience, if you were part of that community, if you're able, please stand and be recognized. honorees has led teams, solved problems others thought were impossible, deployed, mentored, trained, motivated, and carried the weight of both national defense and extraordinary expectations. They did it with distinction. They did it with pride. And they did it under policies that insisted they somehow did not belong, even as their records and the decorations on their uniforms standing beside them prove otherwise. If you take nothing else away from today, take this. Their records say outstanding. Current policy says they lack capability. We know that only one of those things is true. And yet, the absurdity of the situation does not diminish their achievements. It amplifies them. For many of them, being the only openly transgender service member in a unit meant every victory was magnified and every mistake could be weaponized. But they never broke. They led. They served because their country, their mission, and their people mattered more than anything that tried to push them away. Today is not just a farewell. It's a testament to perseverance, to authenticity, and to leadership that transcends policy, politics, and time. Yes, the military is losing more than a century of irreplaceable talent and millions of dollars of invested expertise. That loss is real. But the legacy these leaders leave, the lives they shaped, the teams they built, the courage they embodied, that is permanent. Welcome to a celebration of their courage, their excellence, and their unwavering service. I'd like to introduce our host today here at the Human Rights Campaign. Please welcome member of the HRC Board of Directors, former Assistant Secretary of Defense for Readiness and Commander, U.S. Navy retired, Sean Skelly.
Thank you, General. On behalf of our President, Kelly Robinson, and our board chairs, Matt Smith and Elizabeth Schlesinger, welcome. We're honored to make this venue and our platform available for this special occasion. First, I'd like to acknowledge our distinguished guests and speakers, Representative Takano, Representative Cisneros, former delegate, I understand former delegate Lieutenant Governor Bordayo is here. Unfortunately, she's not here anymore. Also, Virginia Senator Dana Carone, former Secretary of the Air Force Frank Kendall, former Secretary of the Army Eric Fanning, General McChrystal, General Smith. I'd also like to recognize members of our fellow LGBTQ plus organizations, advocacy organizations, Diego Sanchez from PFLAG, Luke Schleusner from Outer National Security, Rodrigo Henlayton from the Trevor Project, Illyria Stanley from Transgender Americans Veterans Association, and a note of our panelists in this morning's panel session on the future of LGBTQ plus veterans benefits and recognition. Major Kara Corcoran, Executive Director of Smart Pride, Ashley Carruthers, Executive Director of Modern Military Association of America, Sabrina Bruce, former Master Sergeant, U.S. Space Force, Sue Fulton, former Assistant Secretary of Public and Intergovernmental Affairs at the Department of Veterans Affairs, and our own Catherine Oakley, Senior Director of Legal Policy at HRC, who moderated the panel. Finally, and most importantly, thank you to the family, friends, allies, colleagues, shipmates, wingmen, battle buddies, who are here with us in the room and online. Welcome to you all. Now to the reason for this convening and why it's important to every American. HRC's been in the fight for the rights of transgender American service members since 2017. As a plaintiff in Karnofsky v. Trump, in response to the current president's first attempt to ban transgender members from the military, the Human Rights Campaign Foundation remains committed to this fight today, filing with our partners at Land Illegal, the suit known as Schilling v. United States in the Western District of Washington, to counter the latest unconstitutional, prejudiced, and dangerous effort by this administration to ban trans people from serving their country. I'm proud to serve as a declarant in that case, as well as in Talbot v. United States of America here in the district. So I'd like to put this ceremony and the ban in the context of our democratic society and why the Human Rights Campaign is so committed to this fight. As a group nationwide, trans people are some of the most vulnerable in our country, at risk and suffering from housing insecurity, food insecurity, unemployment, lack of access to healthcare, poor educational attainment, and the risk of violence of all forms, including self-harm. The current administration has made trans people, along with a large swath of immigrants, a focal point, a deliberately invented, distorted, and demonized other. People to be feared and blamed for myriad social ills and to justify a bigoted, hateful assault upon norms, laws, and human decency to accumulate power and wield it. The current president admitted as such just this past Tuesday in a live stream brief conversation with his legislators in Congress. Transgender, nonconforming, and non-binary Americans are about 1% of Americans over the age of 13, about 2.8 million people among 330 million. There's no solidly agreed upon policy number of the number of transgender service members being affected by this ban, but based on some conversations I've had, I'm going to use the number 4,000 to reference how many people are being affected by the ban. 4,000 people out of a group of 2 million people in uniform, 0.2%. As federal judges have heard and accepted to date in arguments in court, there's no evidence, none, of any of the accusations made by this administration and the Department of Defense to any inadequacies or concerns about their ability to serve. It's just unfounded, indefensible accusation. So then why target 4,000 people out of millions of trans people, out of hundreds of millions of Americans? Because they are members in good standing of the most respected institution in this country, our military. Gallup polling shows that year after year. So the question is, how can you allow people who you demonize to serve in your most trusted institution, where they succeed, they fight and win, they're seen and accepted and respected by people to the left and right of them, and they're praised by the vast majority of their fellow Americans? The answer is you can't allow them to serve in that institution. Trans service members, those few thousand, are on the front lines, canaries in the coal mine of our democracy, as to who can be allowed to be seen, not just as American, but among the best America has to offer. With each passing year, I personally become more moved by the final words of Lincoln's Gettysburg Address and the clarity of vision and purpose they provide 162 years on. That government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. This administration means to remove transgender Americans from our society writ large, invalidating our standing as citizens and as human beings. They've attacked everything from healthcare access to our legal identity, our civil rights protections, to the mere mention of our existence in books or classrooms. They continue to try and wield every lever of power they can reach to disconnect us, demean us, and deny us our humanity. The historical analogs to that are real. They are within our living memory, and they are not to be dismissed. The Human Rights Campaign Foundation will not stand idly by while Americans are attacked by their own governments, federal, state, or local, simply for daring to exist and live authentically. Visibility is power. The fight for the respect of transgender Americans in their service in uniform on behalf of every American is not just a fight for the rights of the LGBTQ+ community, it's a fight for the civil rights of every American, such that government of the people, by the people, for the people, will not fail to see each and every one of us as those people. We will not go quietly. We will not recede into the shadows. We are not alone, because our truth and our visibility is our power, because we are the American dream. So to the retirees, on behalf of the Human Rights Campaign Foundation, thank you for all you've done for our country, for what your service represents on behalf of all Americans, the values that this country is founded upon, and that we must eternally strive to live up to. Thank you.
Secretary Sakala, and thank you also for always being visible. I'm so pleased to welcome our next speaker, who proudly represents California's 39th District and serves as the ranking member of the House Veterans Affairs Committee and leads the Congressional Equality Caucus. Please welcome the Honorable Mark Takano.
Thank you, Commander. That was wonderful, Madam Secretary. Wonderful. Or Madam Assistant Secretary. Whatever. Well, friends, colleagues, thank you for joining us today as we honor the retirements of these service members who, despite their desire to continue serving our country and qualifications to do so, are being forced out by President Trump. I want to begin by apologizing to our service members and reiterate that your service and commitment to our nation does not go unnoticed. I am sorry this administration has chosen to target you for no reason other than cruelty. And you know, my personal apology is one thing. But I know something about apologies as a descendant of Japanese Americans who were interned unjustly by a government who lied about them willfully. And you know, there was a day when we had a government and a Congress that voted to recognize that injustice. And formal apologies were issued by a government and a president. I envision that there will be a day when it won't be my personal apology, but the nation's apology for this grave injustice that has been done to you and others. The bravery that you displayed in volunteering to serve sets you apart. To not only serve in the armed forces, but to serve openly and authentically as your true selves. That is the kind of bravery that inspires us all. Through your service, you committed to something greater than yourselves. You committed to the convictions and promises of our nation and Constitution. In defending these ideals, you have gone above and beyond to support and defend our nation. The American dream is safer with you and our nation's military. And you are part of making this union a more perfect one. As chair of the Congressional Equality Caucus and ranking member of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, I am profoundly sorry for how transgender service members and veterans are being treated. I'm outraged at how you have been targeted by politicians, especially those who have no idea what it means to serve. Last year, I co-led the introduction of the Fit to Serve Act to end the trans military ban and ensure transgender people can openly serve in the military. The Equality Caucus is also supporting additional legislation to enact broad non-discrimination protections in the military. And I give you my solemn word that I will not stop fighting until we pass explicit protections for trans service members into law. As you all become veterans, I know that I'm fighting, know that I'm fighting every day to protect the benefits that you're entitled to, that you've earned. From retirement pay to VA benefits, we're working around the clock to push back against the Trump administration's attacks. And this includes our work to pass the Veterans Healthcare Equality Act, which will ensure all transgender veterans can access the medically necessary care that they need. You fought for us. Now we are fighting for you because you deserve leaders that stand by you and honor your legacy. Now, we're fortunate to have one of those leaders with us today, my colleague from the great state of Delaware and co-chair of the Equality Caucus, Congresswoman Sarah McBride. I can't believe she's only like 34 years old. what makes Congresswoman McBride an accomplished legislator is her commitment to the hard work. She really does do the hard work. And despite all that's been thrown at her in her short tenure in the Congress, Congresswoman McBride has been a vital part of our coalition in the fight for equality. She has crossed the aisle to lobby Republicans. It's really difficult to talk to them. Convincing them to turn against the harmful anti-equality bills the most extreme members of their conference push. It is bravery and courage and leadership like hers and yours that gives me hope in this fight. So without any further ado, it is my honor to welcome my colleague, Congresswoman McBride.
Thank you so much, Representative Takano. Thank you for those kind words, but let me be clear, what I have to do every single day is nothing compared to what these brave patriots have done for this country and what they continue to do for this country every single day by showing up for us and by fighting for a country that is truly worthy of our patriotism. So thank you very much for everything that you have done. Thank you so much, Representative Takano, for your leadership with the Equality Caucus, for your particular steadfast allyship to the trans community at this moment. Thank you so much to my constituent, General Smith, for emceeing this event. Thank you so much to my former colleagues here at the Human Rights Campaign for hosting us today, so that in this ceremony, we can not only reflect on service, but honor it with the seriousness that it deserves. It is truly an honor to be here today, alongside leaders I respect deeply, alongside families who have sacrificed so much, and most importantly, alongside service members whose careers reflect the very best of this country. Today, we honor Americans who have served with honor, with distinction, and with unshakable patriotism. Each of you answered the call to serve. Each of you met the standards. And each of you served and led with integrity, professionalism, and courage. Each of you are brave, honorable, and committed patriots who also dare to have the courage to say out loud that you're transgender. Your willingness to say that to this country, while it has put you in the center of the crosshairs of an administration that seeks to inflict its ideology on our military. Your willingness to share yourselves with your colleagues, with this country, is a gift to this nation. Your records speak for themselves. But what deserves special recognition today is not just what you did, but how you did it. You served with excellence in our armed services. You led teams in moments of pressure and uncertainty. You carried responsibility for lives, for your missions, and for the security of our nation. And you did all of this while carrying something else as well. The quiet, constant knowledge that your ability to serve was never guaranteed by politicians, that your worth could be debated, your service questioned, not because of your performance, but because of simply who you are. That is not a burden any patriot should have to carry. And yet you carried it, and you continue to carry it with grace. It is in vogue in this moment to be cynical. It's in vogue in this moment to be hopeless. It's in vogue in this moment to lose faith in our country. And yet, each one of you, and every single transgender person who has stepped up to serve this country. Summoned a hope, summoned a faith, not just in themselves and one another, but a faith in something bigger than ourselves. A faith in this country. A faith in its values. That kind of devotion doesn't weaken our military, it strengthens it. And yet, despite all of that, this administration is telling you and thousands of others that you can no longer serve. Not because of their performance, not because of their conduct, not because of any rational reason. Simply because of how you express your gender. That is immoral, it is unfair, and it is un-American. Because the strength of our armed forces has never come from exclusion. It comes from commitment, from readiness, from the willingness of people from every background to stand shoulder to shoulder in defense of our nation and our values. Service is not diminished by authenticity. It is enhanced by it. And our nation is not made safer by turning away those who have already proven their skill and their dedication. Today is indeed a retirement ceremony, but it is not an ending. It is a moment of recognition of careers that mattered, of leadership that shaped others, and of service that leaves a lasting mark. Your impact lives on in the people that you trained, in the teams you led, in the example you set for those who follow, and in all of us who seek to work alongside you to restore the ability of transgender people to serve this nation in every capacity, including in our military. And so to all of the transgender service members who are here today or who are watching, who are still serving and soon won't be, people who still cling to the hope to serve someday, please hear me very clearly. You belong. Your service matters. Our country is better because of you. And so long as there is air in my lungs and breath in my body, I will stand alongside you and fight alongside you to guarantee that this country treats every single transgender person with the dignity and respect that they deserve and that these individuals have very clearly earned. Thank you. Thank you for your courage, for your patriotism, for your service, and thank you for inspiring all of us. God bless.
Thank you to Congressman Takano and to Congresswoman McBride. Ma'am, sorry, not sorry. I'm still going to call your office every single day. Please. And now I call to the podium Frank Kendall, former Secretary of the Air Force. Prior to serving as the 26th Secretary of the Air Force from 2021 to 2025, he served in a wide variety of government and corporate roles, including Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics. Additionally, he is an attorney and was active in the field of human rights, working primarily on a pro bono basis. Sir, welcome.
Afternoon. Afternoon. Thank you, General Smith, and thank you to all the attendees for participating today. I participated in a lot of retirements, as I know General McChrystal and General Smith also have, but never one quite like today's. I'm not sure it's appropriate to congratulate our retirees on a retirement they didn't request and hadn't planned on. But I do want to congratulate each of you on your exceptional service to our nation. As I read the biographies of each of our retirees today, one thing came across to me. It was how similar these read to those of all other retirees and to others still serving. The 5 people we honor today stood their watches. They led development teams. They provided logistics support to our forces and our allies. They analyzed intelligence. They oversaw complex air operations. They built stronger teams to guard our shores, and they bore arms in defense of our nation. It is a huge injustice and an enormous loss to the nation that Commander Demon, Colonel Fram, Chief McGuire, Lieutenant Colonel Kreislich, and Sergeant First Class Schmidt are not being allowed to continue to serve their country in uniform. Please give our retirees a well-deserved round of applause. I am absolutely convinced that each of these exceptional people will continue to serve our country out of uniform, just as they did in uniform. As I thought about what I could contribute to this event today, it seemed to me that service to our country was the most appropriate topic that I could address. I'll be very brief, but I do want to touch on the service that all of us here owe to our country, to our communities, and to each other in these extraordinary times. As citizens and as moral human beings, we all have a duty to serve our country by speaking out about the injustices and the wrongs that we see. The bias, the prejudice, the stereotyping of people who don't conform to an imagined norm or ideal is what brought us here today. This is just one aspect of what I will call the reactionary movement in this country that I believe we all have a duty to oppose. I've been around for a long time. My parents were from the greatest generation. My father was in the Navy when Pearl Harbor was attacked. He served throughout World War II, while my mother waited for him and hoped he'd survive as we fought to end fascism. I was a young person during the Civil Rights Movement, as we worked to end institutional racism. I was serving in government when the Berlin Wall came down and we defeated communism. I was in the Obama administration when we repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell and ended institutionalized prejudice against gay people. I believed until recently that the arc of history had moved permanently in the direction of justice. I was wrong. Today, as we recognize the service of these remarkable people, we should appreciate the service of all people who are willing to don the cloth of our country and risk their lives to protect not just raw American material interests, but also the principles so eloquently stated by our founding fathers. We all have an obligation to serve our country by acting to protect these values. There's a very short but great book recently out from Walter Isaacson entitled The Greatest Sentence Ever Written. That sentence is the second sentence of the Declaration of Independence, which you all know well. It reads, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." In a very short book, Isaacson analyzes this sentence, its origins, and its impact. He calls it the greatest sentence ever written because of its enormous and positive impact, not just in the United States, but globally. He closes with a request that Americans work together. As Benjamin Franklin, one of the 5 members of the committee that drafted the Declaration of Independence, did throughout his life, to create a common ground in which our society and our democracy could flourish and continuously improve. We seem to have lost that common ground, and we desperately need to regain it. Realizing the founders' aspirational and inspirational vision is unfinished business. The moment we seem to be moving backwards, at this moment, we seem to be moving backwards in this country. My point is that as we recognize the service of these 5 Americans today, we should also realize that all of us have an obligation to serve our country and its founding vision by doing what the Constitution guarantees us the right to do, speaking out. In our families, in our churches, in our businesses, in our daily interactions, wherever we have or can create an opportunity. I'm asking all of you to serve your country and to repay those we honor today for their service by speaking out against injustice and against the betrayal of the very values that have made our country great. Equal treatment, opportunity for all, the rule of law, and our democracy itself. We are in a moment of crisis that will be worse before it is better. Members of my father's and mother's generation would ask each other a question. What did you do during the war? Someday, we will all be asked what we did during this time. Please think about the answer that you will get. Thank you.
It's now my honor to introduce our presiding officer. His voice has always cut through the noise and politics to focus on what truly makes the U.S. military strong, Mary. General Stanley McChrystal served our nation for more than 34 years, commanding Joint Special Operations Command and shaping how America builds cohesive, high-performing teams. General McChrystal, welcome.
When Colonel Frem asked me if I would be here today and participate, it was an honor, but it was a big ask. You're asking a soldier to share the stage with people from the Navy, the Air Force, and Space Force. And you know, I can only go so far. But this week, I've gathered the firm that I'm a part of. And since I left the military, I've been part of a 100-person firm that tries to help other organizations work together. And so last night, I told them what I'd be doing today, as I missed part of the gathering. And I think almost every member of the team came to me one-on-one and thanked me for being here, which I appreciated. But I shouldn't have had to be thanked for being here. First off, we shouldn't be here. This should be happening. When these professionals finally decide to retire, it should happen on parade fields, in offices, on the deck of ships, wherever the Space Force goes, I don't know. You know, happen like everybody else departs the service with the same gratitude of the nation, the same respect, all the rights and things that happen. For me, this is pretty straightforward. The purpose of our military is to defend our fellow citizens. It is to provide a safe and secure environment for all the opportunities we want to give each other and our children and our grandchildren. And what that means is we've got to leverage every bit of talent that this nation has. We don't have the luxury of saying you're too tall, you're too short, you're the wrong color, you're the wrong religion, you're the wrong sexual orientation. We need the talent. We need the talent that shares the courage, the commitment, and the character to serve. That's what we want our sons and daughters to follow. Those are the people we want shoulder to shoulder with us on the battlefield. Those are the values we want to communicate. This isn't complicated, but I do recognize that it's hard. And I feel that it's very, very important. So I'm honored to be here today, and to the service members, I can't express my gratitude for all you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, General. Very much appreciate that. Now there'll be a little bit of moving pieces here, and I'll just say up front, the mistake on the script is mine, not theirs. But now we're going to recognize each of our retirees. If I could have Giselle Huston please join us on stage.
Good afternoon. Nice to see the Coast Guard going first for once. No, on a serious note, what an honor and a privilege to be here. I'm Lieutenant Giselle Houston. I serve with Chief Jada McGuire at Coast Guard Recruiting Command. A little fun fact about me, though our paths intersected for about 2 years, relatively short amount of time, I tend to have a knack for collecting amazing people in unusual ways. Whether that's a coffee drive-through or running into folks at the Coast Guard frozen section at Costco. You know, it's just such a Giselle thing to do. Unknowingly talking to people that'll be lifelong friends holding a bag of frozen chicken tenders. That's just so it's with that same Giselle magic that I ended up meeting Chief McGuire in a locker room. So fast forward to prepping for this event. When Chief McGuire asked me to speak, I said, Jada, I'm a 13 years of service junior. You've had a long and decorated career. Surely there is somebody more fit to speak on your behalf. And she said, yes, but I was hard pressed to find somebody that cares in the way that you do. So, as it turns out, going back to that locker room, you know, it was just another day for me, just trying to make sure I get my legs in the right holes in my trousers, getting dressed for work. But for Jada, it turns out she was having a bad day. And as we had our exchange, which was admittedly not so memorable for me, she was having a bad day. So I stopped and I listened. And so with that same level of care that I would like to walk you through Chief McGuire's career. After boot camp, Seaman McGuire excelled at Health Services Technician A School, graduating at the top of the class. While going on to complete Dental Technician C School, she simultaneously finished every single Health Services Technician second class practical, allowing her to sit for the service-wide HS2 exam and earn promotion to HS2. Now I just want to flag for you that generally that transition from HS3 to HS2 takes about a year or more, depending on the person. Jada did it in 6 months. Following that, HS2 McGuire was assigned to Headquarters Support Command. In that role, she quickly demonstrated the ability to independently assess and treat patients, freeing medical officers to concentrate on more complex tasks. After advancing to HS2, she was placed in charge of the Building Emergency Medical Services Program and served as lab supervisor for the clinic, further showcasing her leadership and technical expertise. Moving on to independent duty and sea service, HS2 McGuire then attended the independent duty HS school, the Coast Guard's version of Corpsman School, and was assigned to the U.S. Coast Guard Cutter Alliance. There she earned the coveted Cutterman pin, and those are not just pins, those, like every qualification that you earn in service that represents sacrifice, time away from family, so those are coveted. She earned the Cutterman pin and served as a sole medical provider for 100 crew members, while also caring for more than 300 migrants who were rescued at sea. While Reliance was in port for upgrades and repairs, she was asked to cover medical duties aboard the sister cutter Diligence. During her time there, she helped to improve the cutter's medical program and assisted the cooks in improving the food safety program. Returning back to Reliance, she participated in a deep sea rescue of a fisherman that had suffered an amputation. Sitting and caring for the fisherman during the 9-hour transit back to shore, her knowledge and efficient care of the fisherman resulted in not only saving of that limb, but restoring functionality and back to a normal life. For these actions, she received a letter of appreciation for the diligence and the Coast Guard Achievement Medal. So we're going to keep count here on these achievement medals, okay? Achievement Medal from the Reliance. And by the way, the requirement to receive this award is characterized by no professional or leadership achievement clearly exceeding what is normally required. So then we move on to the Baltimore Yard. Here at the Baltimore Yard in Maryland, HS1 supervised the front of house operations and sick call care, having a dozen personnel beneath her. She streamlined patient flow and assisted with planning renovations for the clinic, and was recognized again. So that's 2 achievement awards for her improvements. HS1 McGuire then served at Walter Reed National Medical Center as a Coast Guard medical liaison and beneficiary counselor and assistance coordinator. Never one to sit still. You're catching her in a rare moment. She contributed to the hospital command team, sat on the commander's weekly advisory board, participated in the color guard, and supported the Wounded Warrior program. Her service earned a Joint Services Achievement Medal from the hospital commander and an additional achievement medal from the Coast Guard Health and Safety Worklife. Returning back to the yard as lead pay officer, HS1 McGuire oversaw clinical operations, emergency medical services, training, and supply budgeting, anticipating, not just hanging out, but being forward-leading with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. She secured essential supplies before and maintained throughout the duration of the pandemic. She utilized her ingenuity, contacts throughout the joint services, and knowledge of multi-sourcing capabilities to ensure that the clinic never ran out of necessary supplies. Spearheading the COVID vaccine program for the yard and its area of operations, she designed a vaccine workflow that processed over 150 patients per hour with 8 staff and 1 medical officer, while ensuring the safety of the vaccine protocols were followed. The idea was so good and so effective that the regional and national guard observed it and stole it. During this period, she rose to Chief Petty Officer under the mentorship of HSC Joshua Garcia and Chief Warrant Officer Jacques Velez-Belay, who's also good at maths. Receiving the Coast Guard Commendation Medal, which is characterized and associated with exceptional and extraordinary meritorious performance or accomplishment. Throughout her career, Chief Petty Officer McGuire has been a steadfast advocate for the LGBTQIA+ community. She guided several colleagues as they began their own transitions, providing not only medical counsel, emotional support, but also navigating the administrative process, which we all hate. In her second tour at the Coast Guard Yard, she finally took the courageous step of beginning her own gender transition. Beginning her transition was nothing short of momentous, as she had kept this aspect of her personal journey private for more than 15 years. She positioned herself as a vocal advocate and a mentor to anyone who needed her. The result was not only felt at the personnel level, but also reflected in her being interviewed by the Coast Guard Mid-Atlantic as part of their inclusivity programs. Her openness helped foster a more all-encompassing environment and demonstrated the power of authentic leadership. Most recently, Chief McGuire joined the Coast Guard recruiting command enlisted as Sessions Branch. This is where we intersected. Here she verified the medical status of her 120 applicants each week, ensuring flawless accession and compliance. Her meticulous review of more than 6,000 physicals helped the recruiting mission exceed both active duty and reserve goals for the first time in 7 years. Continuing her history of advocacy, she participated as an actress in the Coast Guard's new sexual assault prevention and response training program. She also spearheaded a pilot for the U.S. military entrance process in command, we all look maps, to modernize the Coast Guard's waiver decision process. Again, because Chief McGuire had ideas worth stealing, it was since extended, or has since been extended to joint services via U.S. McComb. Oh, and another achievement medal. So, Coast Guard recruiting plan brings us to the end of Jada's time in service. But before I close out, I wanted to explain one additional yet critical aspect of her service, being a chief. I want you all to understand the caliber of person who dons this title. You've heard me say Chief McGuire, Chief Petty Officer McGuire, but that's just not another honorific. That is a personal and professional lifetime achievement. The best way to capture the significance of a chief comes down to two things: the meaning of the anchor and as the chief. The anchor is the identifying authority of a chief petty officer and emblematic of a chief. It represents stability and security. It reminds chiefs of their responsibility and to keep those they serve safe from harm's way. Secondly, asking the chief. It is a tradition that predates formal leadership schools, written doctrine, modern command structures, and modern command structures. Maritime services rely on the experience of chiefs, the institutional memory of the service, who are equipped to weather and guide their crews through technical, operational, and personal hardship. So the answer became simple: ask the chief. That said, Chief Petty Officer McGuire's 23-year career is a continuous record of dedication and decorated service. Her legacy of clinical excellence, innovation under pressure, compassionate leadership, and fearless advocacy stand as a testament to the Coast Guard core values of honor, respect, and devotion to duty, and the enduring spirit for those who serve. Chief McGuire, Jada, thank you for your extraordinary contributions.
Giselle, come back up. We are now going to do the presentation of the Coast Guard Achievement Medal. So I would ask that you all please rise for the presentation. The citation reads, Chief Petty Officer McGuire is cited for superior performance of duty while assigned to Coast Guard Recruiting Command's enlisted accessions branch at Washington, D.C. from June 2022 to June 2025. Displaying exceptional professionalism, Chief Petty Officer McGuire was responsible for verifying the medical status of over 120 Coast Guard applicants on a weekly basis, confirming all medical conditions were thoroughly evaluated and approved for accession compliance. Chief Petty Officer McGuire's effort led to the seamless assessment of new members arriving at Training Center Cape May and Leadership Development Center, which contributed to the Coast Guard Reserve's successfully seating active and reserve accession mission for the first time in 7 years. Supporting senior medical officers, Chief Petty Officer McGuire meticulously vetted and validated over 6,000 accession physicals, certifying a timely and accurate adjudication process and entering documents into the electronic military health system. Moreover, Chief Petty Officer McGuire zealously spearheaded a groundbreaking pilot program with the U.S. Military Entrance Processing Command to modernize the Coast Guard's waiver decision process, aligning procedures with advanced technology at military entrance processing stations. Chief Petty Officer McGuire's diligence, perseverance, and devotion to duty are most heartily commended and are in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Coast Guard. By order of the Secretary of Homeland Security, Chief Petty Officer Jada McGuire stands retired as of 1 October 2025. Please be seated. Jada, the podium is yours.
General McChrystal, thank you, distinguished guests. Good afternoon, everyone. It is very, very weird to be the first one up here. Seriously, Giselle said it, the Coast Guard is almost never like first. Except when the Navy goes somewhere, we go in before that. After 23 years of honorable decorated service, I'm here to say goodbye. No, not forever, just to the uniform I'm no longer permitted to wear, and well, the shipboard coffee. Officially, I was forced to retire on the 1st of October. For most of my career, I didn't want a retirement ceremony, but as a chief, I eventually realized that the ceremony is less about the retiree and more about the crew. It gives them a chance to say farewell and to adjust and transition to life without you being there. I appreciated that purpose, but I hesitated to schedule one before I left because it felt like hearing those same voices that gave me the choice to retire or lose everything that I had earned, then turning around and tell me how amazing my service was and celebrating it like I was walking out on my own decision was just salt in the wound. Therefore, I do want to thank the Human Rights Campaign and Colonel Fram and everybody who organized this and actually gave me a ceremony that I can truly be proud of. I joined the military to be part of the solution, to defend our rights and freedoms, and I chose the Coast Guard because it lets me help those in need and admittedly learn how to tie an actual knot.
I quickly discovered that the real knots are the ones that we tie around each other's lives. Friendship, mentorship, and yes, a few tangled bureaucratic loops. I've been fortunate enough to collect a few medals along the way, and hearing my achievements read off was a reminder of everything that I did, including the times my life was on the line. However, it's some of the stories in between those moments and the friends that I made along the way that I will remember more. For example, when my cutter pulled into New York on orders to participate in Fleet Week, I was simply told, take the BM3, a couple of non-race, go to this location and do what they tell you. Well, when we got there, they pointed us at the bar, said grab a few drinks, mingle, and talk about the Coast Guard. That was probably the best orders I had ever gotten. So a little bit later, and maybe a few drinks too many, I had told everyone how amazing the Coast Guard was. And everybody walked away with just a little bit more knowledge about us, because everybody always forgets us. Or the time that I was working at my first clinic, that I walked into the supply room to get some gloves, and the SK3 in there looked at me and said, you look beat down, what happened? That SK3, to this day, 20 years later, is my best friend. Thanks, Mike, for putting up with me all this time. Sometimes the best way to honor our service is to enjoy the camaraderie that actually comes with it. So I try not to shake to that. From day one, I was an advocate for LGBTQIA+ service members, and when the Coast Guard finally opened its doors for transgender personnel, I learned that process inside and out, so I could guide anyone who walks through my door. I'm humbled to have helped several of my colleagues on their own journeys. Being transgender never kept me from deploying, and I never failed to fulfill my duties. Living authentically proved far more truthful and beneficial to not only myself, but also my units, than pretending to be someone else. Every command I served under seemed proud to have me on their crew, and even though I had never originally planned to become a Chief Petty Officer, I now wear that anchor with immense pride. I do want to express my gratitude. It may be a little weird, but Presidents Obama and President Biden for both starting that conversation and keeping it alive. Admiral Zimkoff for standing against the first wave that tried to remove us from service, and Admiral Fagan, who may or may not know that many of us lovingly called Commandant. Her steadfast support despite political pressure cost her her career, but she never failed her oath to the Constitution and to our service. CWO Jacques Velez-Belay, and Chief Petty Officer Josh Garcia, and Lindsay Peters, and Lieutenant Houston, your encouragement before, during, and after my transition meant the world. My late mother, Specialist Sherry McGuire, and my sister Elizabeth, not only accepted me when I came out, but broke the mini panic attack building inside of me by going, it's about damn time. The Yard Chief's Mess, the Headquarters Chief's Mess, my Chief's Academy class ladies, and my CCTI crew from spring of 2023. With a special shout out to my fellow women Chief Initiates who gave me my first gender euphoric moment in the locker room. The reaction had me very nearly crying in happiness at their not realizing or not being concerned that I was transgender. No way, really? We wouldn't have known if you hadn't said anything. Still makes me smile to this day. Last but certainly not least, to my husband Amari, who found me probably during the worst time to try and have a relationship, deployments, who finally pulled the last of my eggshell off by looking at me and said, what would you say if I said I'm not a girl anymore? To which I said, wait, we can do this? What would you say if I said I am a girl? My home port, no matter where you are, my love, my soulmate, my heart and my life. Thank you. Retirement isn't an end, and even when it's forced upon you with no choice or discussion, it's still a new chapter. I've applied to a doctorate nurse practitioner program and hope to hear back actually in the next couple weeks. Expect to see me in a lab coat instead of dress blues. I'll keep advocating for the rights and freedoms we all cherish, bringing medical care where it's needed, fighting the bureaucracy, supporting LGBTQIA+, and simply helping strangers in need. To my fellow Coasties, officially we're supposed to say guardians, but I like Coasties better. Thank you for the rides, the rescues, the laughs, and the lessons. To my family and friends, thank you for standing by me when the tides were rough. And to the Coast Guard, particularly the era before 2024, thank you for giving me a purpose, a community, and a lifetime of stories worth telling. The seas are rough, but I'm ready to navigate whatever dark waters lie ahead until we return to calm seas. Semper Paratus.
Thank you so much, Jada. I would ask, would Victoria Vu please join us on stage?
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everybody. Across every formation, every unit, in every era in our Army, there are NCOs who meet this standard. And then there are those who quietly define them. Sergeant First Class Schmidt is firmly in the latter category. She is one of the finest non-commissioned officers I have ever had the privilege of serving alongside. Technically exceptional, relentlessly professional, and unwavering in her commitment to soldiers and mission alike. She embodies the warrior ethos, not as a slogan, but as daily practice, through discipline, competence, and an absolute refusal to lower the standard. Her leadership was never loud, never performative. It did not rely on catchphrases or theatrics. Instead, it was consistently present, dependable, and effective, focused on readiness, accountability, and the very real work of building lethal, resilient teams, prepared to win when it matters. In every environment and under less than ideal circumstances, she delivered results the Army demands and the mission deserves. While today marks her retirement, it is important to acknowledge that this transition arrives earlier than anyone who has worked with her would have expected or wished. Sergeant First Class Schmidt confronted this reality the same way she confronted every challenge in uniform, with dignity, discipline, and an unshakable sense of purpose. Rooted in service to something larger than herself, her legacy will not be measured by the length of her career, but by the lethality, professionalism, and character of the soldiers she trained, mentored, and led. The Army is stronger because of you. And for those of us who had the privilege to work alongside her, we're better leaders because of it. It is my honor to introduce you, Sergeant First Class Catherine Schmidt.
I'd ask that you please rise for the presentation of the Meritorious Service Medal to Sergeant First Class Catherine Schmidt. For superior service spanning over 20 years, culminating as an equal opportunity advisor, the Meritorious Service Medal is hereby awarded to Sergeant First Class Catherine Schmidt. Her technical acumen, astute mentorship, and commitment to excellence were instrumental in the command's success. Sergeant First Class Schmidt's dedication to duty and selfless service are in keeping with the finest traditions of the military service and reflect great credit upon herself, the 704th Military Intelligence Brigade, the United States Army Intelligence and Security Command, and the United States Army. By order of the Secretary of the Army, Sergeant First Class Catherine Schmidt stands retired as of 1 December 2025. Please be seated. Catherine, the floor is yours.
There's a part of me that wants to come up here and just say remarks complete. The fact is,
I don't know if I'm supposed to start with humor or humility or some kind of gratitude that feels earned, so I'm just gonna start with the truth. I spent the last few months not knowing what the hell I was gonna say here. How do you stand in front of this community, in front of generals and congresspeople and advocates and professionals, and in front of people who dedicated their lives to the same questions I've been asking myself? In the last 12 months, I've called into question everything I thought I understood about what honorable service means. I did this for 20 years. 20 years of showing up, maintaining and keeping the standard, not because it's some abstract rule written on a page, but because it protects the people who sign their name on the line. 20 years of believing that if you do right, if you lead right, if you demand integrity from yourself before you demand it from anyone else, then maybe you end up building something that matters. And then 2025 happened. Policies changed, and those changes made me unsuitable for service. That's not how the Army teaches you to talk about service or courage or integrity, but that's what it did. And I'll be honest, for a while I couldn't separate the two. I couldn't figure out where institutional betrayal ended and my own failures began. The Army sent me to a lot of places and trusted me with a lot of things. I've stood in windowless buildings watching the map light up with decisions that would change international geopolitics. I've led teams that shaped operations across the entire world. I've been the one wearing the literal boots on the ground in the places where that was a news item. I've trained new soldiers who never left their hometown before they stepped onto a bus for basic training. I've watched privates become sergeants, and sergeants become the kind of leaders I would trust with my very life. If I'm proud of anything I've done, it's that. Helping people grow into what they signed up for, and sometimes the responsibilities they never expected to carry. Institutions fail people, but institutions are made of people, and that's what I keep going back to. Not the things I did, not the places I went, the missions completed, the people, the soldiers. I remember a young officer who made sure inspections got done right, even though it meant his personal time disappeared. Not for recognition or a bullet on an eval, but just because that's what the people under him deserved. I remember my first sergeant showing up at 2 in the morning to sit in a hospital waiting room with me because my wife was in danger and I needed it. I think about a specialist who threw himself off a shipping container to catch falling equipment that would have crushed his squad mates. An intel analyst who stood in the back of a watch floor full of people who far outranked him and said, no, that's not a good strike, and saved lives. I thought about a million acts of selflessness and courage that never get decorated, never talked about, that happen every single day in every unit across every branch of the military, not because of some ideal, not because of speeches or value statements, or because some politician wants to set themselves up as leaders, but because the people doing them show up and they care about each other. That's the Army I know. That's the one that's worth something. And so I'm not going to stand here and tell you that everything's fine, and that service is uncomplicated, and that everything that's happened is just part of the natural order, and that institutions don't fail their people, because they do, and they will. The Army taught me what honor and integrity meant, and that integrity cost me the only thing I've ever really known how to do. It cost me being a soldier. But here's what I will tell you. The people are still worth it. Right now, today, maybe even at this very moment, there's a 17-year-old kid walking into an Army recruiting statement, and they're not thinking about high-minded ideals. They're not thinking about the words of the national anthem. They're not thinking about the flags billowing in the air. They're thinking about, how the hell do I get out of this little town? They're looking for a way forward they can't find anywhere else. And they're going to sign up to serve the people of the United States, not knowing a thing about what that actually means. They won't know what the Army values sound like when they're being lived by someone who takes them seriously. They won't know that honor isn't a buzzword or a cliche or something reserved only for battle cries and fantasy games. they're gonna learn it the way I did, from the people around them who choose to live it every single day. If the only legacy I leave is that the army that kid joins today is better than the one I signed up for in January of 2005, if I help build or protect or fight for even a sliver more integrity, one more space where it's safe to speak the truth, this whole thing was worth it. I'm not a philosopher, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a politician, I'm not even an officer. I've just been someone who wanted to dedicate my life to something bigger than me, something that matters, to honor, to the people around me. That's what I try to do, and that's what I'm leaving with. I do have one last thing to say to the people who are still serving. Your duty is to the people next to you. Take care of them the way I've seen you do it. Do what's right. Speak up when things are wrong. And if this institution ever tells you that taking care of the people next to you is too disruptive, if it asks you to be less ethical, less brave, less true, less yourself, then you know you found the defining moment of your career. And get a good one. Cool.
Wow. That's a soldier. Would Ozzy Presided please join us on stage?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ozzy Presided, and I am here to introduce our next retiree, my mom, Lieutenant Colonel Erin Kraken Presided. Since I can remember, and much longer than that, my mom has been in the Air Force. In my world, that meant long days I wouldn't see her, early morning goodbyes, and late night returns. At times, she'd be gone so long, she'd accidentally miss something important to our family for the sake of her job. I always understood that what she was doing was important, but I'd always found it unfair to me since I could never see her as often as I wanted to. Nowadays, I can recognize that what she did really, really mattered, and I hadn't been easy for her either. She had given everything she had for 20 years, and I can still see that she does. Growing up with someone who flew planes was pretty fun. I learned a little about the drones she flew, the teams she led, and the missions all over the world. She'd help build programs, guide operations, and make sure everything was running smoothly, especially in tense situations. But truth be told, that's not the part of her I vividly remember. I remember her professionalism and teamwork abilities and how often she was delighted to work with her buddies in the Air Force. I could never recall a time where she didn't have a silly story to tell me about her day or during deployment, and even the day I finally figured out why her call sign is Kraken. As someone who has taken leadership positions for myself, my mom is who I really look up to when faced with the situation. She didn't believe that a good leader had to be the loudest or the most dominant. It was about listening. It was about doing the hard work with determination and standing up for your teammates. She cared so deeply about her airmen, her teammates, her mission, and that sentiment carried over to our family too. Her job was no walk in the park either. She was faced with constant challenges, long days, and sacrifices her family had to make. Honestly, she had every right to come home and grouch around the house, but she always came home with a smile on her face. She was a shining star of commitment, integrity, and service. She showed me that strength could be quiet, compassion can be powerful, and a true leader would put others first. Today, my mom celebrates over 20 years of service. I don't have the words to describe how proud I am of her as a friend and a daughter. In body, mind, and soul, I would never think to have her any other way. The Air Force had shaped her, but she also made it better by being a part of it. Mom, thank you for serving our country, for leading with heart and spirit, and showing me how the long hours can still be fun. I love you so much, and I'm grateful to be your daughter.
ask you to please rise, I guess you've done that, for the presentation of the Meritorious Service Medal to Lieutenant Colonel Aaron Isaac. To all who shall see these presents greetings. This is to certify that the President of the United States of America, authorized by Executive Order 16 January 1969, has awarded the Meritorious Service Medal, 1st Oak Leaf Cluster, to Lieutenant Colonel Aaron S. Kryzik for meritorious service from 2 June 2022 to 30 November 2025. Lieutenant Colonel Aaron S. Kryzik distinguished himself in the performance of outstanding service to the United States as the Deputy Director of Wing Operations A3, 472nd Electronic Combat Squadron, 319th Operations Group, 319th Reconnaissance Wing, Robins Air Force Base, Georgia, from 2 June 2022 to 30 November 2025. During this period, Colonel Kryzik's leadership was instrumental in coordinating the Air Combat Command and E-11A and RQ-4 program staff to facilitate operations for 2 weapon systems valued at a combined $5 billion. In addition, as Assistant Director of Operations, she supervised and guided 3 Air Force civilians driving readiness, budget, and essential staff functions. Furthermore, as Acting Deputy Operations Group Commander, Colonel Kryzik coordinated E-11A exercise participation to ensure aircrew training and sortie production met higher headquarters objectives. Finally, her coordination was vital in generating 272 squadron E-11A training sorties and producing 28 fully mission-qualified deployers for Central Command, enabling 1,500 combat sorties, 7,300 combat hours, and 370 precision strikes. The singularly distinctive accomplishment of Lieutenant Colonel Kryzik's culminate a distinguished career in service of her country and reflect great credit upon herself and the United States Air Force. By order of the Secretary of the Air Force, Lieutenant Colonel Aaron Kryzik stands retired as of 1 December 2025. Please be seated. Aaron, the floor is yours.
Goodness, so many names being cut up here. Thank you, Ozzy. I also want to start by saying thank you to everyone in attendance today, Representative, General. This is incredible to get to experience my retirement like this, so thank you for making it so much better than it was. And thank you for everyone attending here today, and to the Air Force that has been my home for more than 20 years. Standing here now is not how I imagined my efforts protecting this country would play out and end, but I am proud to do so with 4 other exceptional Americans that I only truly met in person today, 4 that I have worked with, have struggled with, and who I would proudly give my life to protect. We 5, and many among you today, have all taken an oath to our Constitution. We have sworn to protect this country from all enemies, and we have made it a lifelong promise without any mental reservation, because we are dedicated to those ideals that our nation was founded upon. Over my career, I've been called a hero and thanked for my service, presented with awards for exceptional achievement and honor and sacrifice and vigilance. The late nights and the early mornings that Ozzy talked about, I did all those things and I was given credit for, recognized for, and made to endure presentation ceremonies for. I did that for the hope that I was making this country a better place for my 3 children, and for your children and your families and your hopes as well. We all wanted to leave our service better than we found it, to leave something our kids would be proud to take up and make better themselves, a legacy of proud, authentic service. Now I have been separated from the Air Force not because my performance, commitment, or ideals have been found lacking, but because the policy changed on who could serve. And that reality is difficult to say out loud. I've never failed any Air Force test for fitness, for academics, for flight evaluation, or for my leadership ability. This change is difficult because it doesn't erase what came before, but it changed how this chapter of my life closes. But what I want to be very clear about is this: my service was real. My dedication was real, and the years I gave to this country were given fully, honorably, and especially at the end with great pride. Those that served alongside me, that are being brushed aside by recent policies, they are Americans that served and deserve recognition like all of us today. Transgender service members are persons of character, not caricatures. And a society that justifies exclusion by denying our humanity needs to learn its lesson better from the civil rights movement. The whole category of people are reduced to abstraction. There often follows a very real threat of violence to the same. And it's only through sheer luck and timing that I stand here today to represent so many in my service that are not visible to you in the way I am right now. But I read their voices, and I see their frustrations, and I recognize many airmen were promised early retirement, only to see that policy reversed after their decisions were made and promises given. I hope my brothers and sisters find justice in this, where in my humble opinion it feels warranted. I also represent those airmen that have held the same values I did, often with little recognition and generally at great personal cost. They are separating from being transgender like me, and it is my responsibility on the stage to remind all those in attendance that their service mattered too. You are surrounded daily by so many transgender airmen and fellow Americans who serve our country quietly and professionally, many of whom are not here today or in uniform because being seen now carries risk. To me, their choices do not reflect a lack of courage. They are the result of prioritizing safety, family, or survival in a moment that could easily demand too much of them. And for that reason, to my friends and family that are here and to those listening that know who they are, I will say simply that I see you, I know you, and I love you. As for seeing me today, I cannot say how you see me. My eyes like me daily. I'm a proud mother who lived the Air Force core values the same way I try to live everything else, with integrity, compassion, and a belief that our people and all their diversity are the mission. We were always stronger because we were united as one people and one force. Before I depart, allow me a minute to mention a little bit about what I've done in my time. In 2014, I led the RQ-4 Global Hawk and NORAD Northcom's Airspace Joint Integration Test and flew the first unmanned aircraft at altitude within the national airspace outside of a restricted area. I got a coin for that. And I was so excited to get to do it. I was the first pilot to command an RQ-4 Block 40 when it deployed to CENTCOM. As a major, I was the senior national representative and ranking U.S. officer for 18 months during the stand-up of NATO's Alliance Ground Surveillance Force in Italy, and the first evaluator pilot in that same system. I led Air Combat Command's operational divestiture of the RQ-4 Block 20s and 30s, then moved to Georgia and helped fly, and then divest the JSTARS as well, while being initial cadre to the E-11 Bacon mission that recently formed there. Oh, and I just happened to also be the first Air Force pilot returned to active flying status in May 2024 after stabilizing on hormone replacement therapy. I was set to deploy with E-11 just 6 months or so later. Didn't feel my readiness. These uniforms, my uniform, it has shaped me. It taught me how to do these things through discipline, commitment, and humility. It gave me a 60,000-foot worldview of the world and a deep appreciation for the quiet strength of those who serve without expecting applause. While my time in uniform has ended, my commitment to service does not. I leave the Air Force proud of the missions I accomplished, proud of the people I stood beside, and proud to say that I served honestly, even when honesty was hard and cost me dearly. To the airmen still serving, especially those who feel unseen, you matter. Your service matters, and you are not alone. Thank you for allowing me the privilege of appearing before you today. I will always be an airman and hold true to my oath, because the uniform may come off, but the values it represents never will. Thank you.
turn. Would Leanne Riley please join us on stage?
To my Coast Guard friends as a Navy folk, this is one of those times where it actually isn't so bad to get to go first. To have to follow such a distinguished group here is an incredible honor. And it is a true honor and privilege to stand before you today and have the opportunity to honor Commander Blake Drayman, whose retirement after 20 years of service both ends an incredible career and is the beginning of a new chapter, which I know is going to be very exciting. If you have never met Blake, you may not realize he is one of the most remarkable yet unassuming people in this room. His quiet humility contrasts sharply with the immense impact he has had throughout his career. Blake and I first met 20 years ago, reporting to Officer Candidate School in Pensacola, Florida, just a few weeks apart from each other. A graduate of the Ozark Christian College with a degree in biblical literature, and he was working as a clerk at a gas station when the Navy gave him a call and offered him a commission. We have often joked that there must have been a significant recruiting shortfall in 2005, or at least some sort of major administrative error when they allowed both of us to serve. Shipmate, I think you would agree neither one of us looked much like Navy logisticians at that time. Someone with great foresight took a chance on Blake. Over the past 2 decades, he's dedicated himself to the Navy with unmatched passion. Whether at sea, aboard the USS Denver, the USS Maine, or the USS Frank Cable, playing Army soldier in Bagram, Afghanistan, or taking leadership roles in many various joint and naval logistics commands. Blake's career has been defined by excellence. He's not just dedicated. He has been a change agent everywhere he's gone, always striving to improve processes and inspire innovation. And while his accomplishments and accolades, both in and out of uniform, speak for themselves, it's his leadership in adversity that truly does set him apart. Today isn't just about career milestones. It's also about recognizing Blake's example. He has navigated complexities of leadership in an environment that hasn't always been kind or supportive of him, facing challenges that many of us would never, ever be able to fully understand. Yet he never allowed those challenges to define him. Blake has led with character, showing that it is both possible to be strong and vulnerable, firm in convictions and compassionate in his approach. As a leader and advocate, Blake has always put service before self, making the Navy a better and more inclusive place. A key part of what made Blake the man he is today, I must take a moment to recognize his parents, Dr. Reverend David Drayman and Carrie Drayman, who are with us today. Through numerous challenges, you have stood by him, and your unwavering commitment has been vital in shaping the man we see before us. The love and gratitude you have provided him have played a crucial role in his success, and you should be incredibly proud today. General McChrystal, with your permission, sir, I'd like to borrow a few lines from your most recent publication and adapt those for us in the seagoing profession. Thank you, sir. Sailors have long pondered the value of their service. On a grand scale, defending the nation, safeguarding the seas, and ensuring the freedom of oppressed people offer clear purpose. But on a personal level, the significance of a mission completed can feel uncertain when larger objectives drift out of reach. Sailors understand this, but it doesn't quiet the question, does this all matter? Commander Drayman, your service has been extraordinary. Your legacy is one of resilience, integrity, and making a lasting difference. As you step into the next chapter, know that your service did matter, and your impact will continue to resonate with all of us. Now, it's time to honor you properly. Shipmate, will you please join me on this, or below the stage, to continue your celebration.
Well trained. The President of the United States takes pleasure in presenting the Meritorious Service Medal, Gold Star in lieu of the third award, to Commander Blake M. Drayman for service set forth in the following citation. for outstanding meritorious service as supply officer at USS Frank Cable, AS-40, from June 2024 to May 2025. Commander Drummond's visionary leadership, embodied by the Dream Big philosophy, empowered his officers and chiefs, fostered effective communication, and promoted data-driven decision-making. These efforts led to tangible improvements in the ship's mission readiness. As supply officer, the postal team earned an outstanding rating in the 2024 postal inspection. Dispersing operations achieved outstanding during the 2024 fleet examination group audit, and inventory management team excelled in the first ever Ernst & Young financial improvement and audit readiness with 99% accuracy. Additionally, he expertly led the department as lead tender and lead maintenance activity in Guam, reinforcing the Find a Way to Yes reputation across U.S. 5th and 7th Fleet ships and submarines. His exceptional leadership and supply support, spanning parts procurement, maintenance, funding, accountability, and allocation, enhanced fleet readiness. His efforts were instrumental in the successful completion of 11 fleet maintenance availabilities and 6 voyage repair periods, supporting both submarines and surface combatants in Guam. Commander Drummond's professionalism, perseverance, and loyal dedication to duty reflected great credit on him and were in the keeping of the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. For the President, C.J. Kavanaugh, Rear Admiral, U.S. Navy Commander, Submarine Force, U.S. Pacific Fleet. By order of the Secretary of the Navy, Commander Blake Drennan stands retired as of January 1st, 2026.
When I look back on 20 years of service, I don't want people to just remember my accomplishments. I want them to remember a career shaped by curiosity, a little bit of mischief, a dash of audacity, and a damn good story to tell. And maybe a few stories that I should only tell after a few rounds of Subic Bay Punch, like any well-lived sailor. I've always been a leader who thrives in the backdrop, willing to step into the limelight when needed, but happier to make things work quietly behind the scenes. I've always been more deliberate than dramatic, and yet somehow I've managed to always step into more firsts and more spotlights than most people encounter in a lifetime, much less in a 20-year Navy career. Before I start getting into this, I need to make sure I thank my parents and General McChrystal, in case I start crying and I can't say those words at the end. So, thank you for all that you have supported me with and for your ever-enduring support through the last 20 years. Early on, I learned something simple and practical. Not everything is within our control. What is within our control is how we act, how we treat people, how we carry responsibility, and whether we show up with consistency and care and do the work. I was fortunate to work with leaders who lived that every single day. When I was a lieutenant at the Pentagon, sitting down with a captain mentor who later went on to put on 2 stars, he looked me in the eye and said, no matter how this policy turns out, I want you to know and want to make sure that you're okay. He was also the first person to tell me to show up in the right uniform to the 2016 Supply Corps Ball. And that took guts. Compared to how many of my friends were treated, that dignity mattered. That moment shaped how I served, and it is one of the reasons that I am standing here today. I've had the privilege of serving during a period of enormous cultural change. From the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell to Women in Submarines. That first woman who earned dolphins, she's in the room today, because I was sick. Women in combat, uniform changes, We got rid of the bucket hat, we brought back the bucket hat, we got rid of so all those things. Policy changes, then more policy changes. Pushing the assumptions and navigating change is challenging, often exhausting, but deeply engaging. I sought out work where curiosity mattered as much as my experience, where answers weren't obvious, where steady leadership helped people focus on the mission, not the identity of the service member. Often I found myself in roles that weren't part of any grand plan, just the result of being willing to raise my hand and say, sure, I'll take that on. Like going to Guam when I hate the beach. Or sending the submariner to an aviation depot. Because I surely know how to fly. I know how to dive. And I'm bad at that too. Sure, I'll take that on. Sometimes beautifully, sometimes it was messy. It was always just happened to be the right place at the right time. Marcus Aurelius wrote, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be, just be one. I carried that with me, not as a rule book, but as a reminder. Leadership isn't a performance, it is a daily practice. Be clear, be fair, be deliberate, act with intention, even when no one is watching. Serving as supply officer on the submarine tender in Guam was the greatest privilege of my career. I got to go back to my roots, lead sailors, mentor junior officers, repair submarines, preparing what would have been my 12th deployment. I was the only person that was allowed to tell another department no. And my standing rule was simple. If it wasn't illegal and it didn't involve people getting hurt, then it was on the table. My job was to break down barriers and take care of sailors, and occasionally ask for forgiveness, never for permission. Even though that tour was cut short, best job ever. And I love submarines, and I love sailors, and I miss it dearly. What endures is not the medals, but the intention behind how and why we serve and how we treat people along the way. And I'm also going to borrow a line from General McChrystal that I've said 1,000 times, and I didn't know that he was the one who said it until ChatGPT told me so. I've said it so many times. He said, it's not just what we do, but why and how we do it that matters. Ultimately, it's not just our adversaries we must defeat, but also the system that creates them. I have spent my entire career pushing back against systems that too often treated my sex, my sexuality, or my gender as a measure of my capability under the guise of readiness. I chose instead to invest my energy in building something better. Teams grounded in trust, fairness, and performance. The work of dismantling hate and building better systems is far from over, and I still have more to give. As I step out of uniform, this isn't an ending so much as a continuation. The values that guided my service, steadiness, curiosity, and a care for the people beside me were never tied to that uniform. They carry me forward to the next chapter. I leave grateful for the people that I've served with, the proud work we did together, and the confident that the work, often mischievous, occasionally audacious, and always human, will continue long after today. Thank you.
Thank you, Blake. Would Aaron Carper please join us on stage?
Good afternoon.
When the United States was attacked on September 11th, 2001, brief rank answered the call commissioning into the Air Force and swearing to protect and defend the Constitution, and to uphold the Air Force's core values: integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. For the next 16 years, until the stand-up of the United States Space Force, Bree did just that. Lieutenant Fram's first assignment was at the Air Force Research Laboratory, where she worked on spacecraft mechanisms. During this assignment, she deployed in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, serving as a sensor specialist and airspace coordinator for the Horned Owl, a C-12 aircraft that was modified to detect IEDs. Lieutenant Fram planned over 300 Horned Owl missions and saved the lives of countless American and coalition forces. Her work to reduce the cost of spacecraft launch and to protect the American forces in Iraq earned her a rank of #1 of 26 lieutenants at AFRL when she departed. After completing a master's in astronautical engineering at the Air Force Institute of Technology, Bree promoted to captain and was assigned to the Space and Missile Systems Center, the first place we worked together. She worked on space-based infrared systems, or SIBRs, a constellation of satellites that provide missile warning capabilities in defense of our homeland. She graduated from Squadron Officer School as a distinguished graduate, top 10% of her class, and was selected to work on the staff of the 3-star commander, providing fiscal and technical insight into the $1 billion SIBRs portfolio. When she departed SMC, Captain Fram was ranked as the #2 of 437 captains at SMC. For her next assignment, Captain Fram went to the National Reconnaissance Office's operational unit in Colorado. There she managed operations and maintenance efforts, ensuring that our critical national intelligence systems were available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In her first year, Bree was ranked as the #1 of 172 Air Force captains across the NRO. The following year, she was promoted to major, and when she departed that assignment, she was in the top 5% of majors across the organization. Major Fram was selected for the prestigious Capitol Hill Legislative Fellowship Program, serving on the staff of the ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee Readiness Subcommittee. As a follow-on assignment, she went to the Pentagon to work on strategic planning for the Air Force budget, and the quality of her work earned her the position of executive officer to the 2-star director and a rank of #1 of 12 majors in that organization. She moved to international affairs and was the Iraq country director, managing foreign military sales cases worth over $13 billion. Bree pinned on Lieutenant Colonel and was ranked #2 of 34 field grade officers in that unit. In June 2018, Lieutenant Colonel Fram returned to AFRL for her material leader assignment, managing a $940 million portfolio executed by a team of 220 military, civilians, and contractors. One of her responsibilities was to lead the transition of a counter-small unmanned aerial system from tech development into operations. Under her leadership, that system was fielded to defend a Navy hospital ship that supported American civilian hospitals during the COVID pandemic. For their work to operationalize the counter-UAS system, Lieutenant Colonel Fram's team was recognized as AFRL's Team of the Year. A recognition, she tells me, is one of the most proud moments of her career. At the end of her assignment, Lieutenant Colonel Fram was ranked #1 of 69 lieutenant colonels in the organization. As Lieutenant Colonel Fram was wrapping up her ML tour, the Space Force stood up and she became a guardian, committed to upholding the new service's values: character, connection, commitment, and courage. No surprise given her record to date, Bree hit the ground running. She went to Naval War College that year and graduated again as a distinguished graduate in the top 10% of her class. Bree left Newport to return to the Pentagon, first working on the stand-up of the new Space Acquisition Staff function, our second time working together. She was tenacious, driving critical organizational and policy decisions, and was ranked #1 of 19 lieutenant colonels in the organization. When she was selected for promotion to colonel, she earned a line number of 2 of 55. For her final assignment, Colonel Fram moved to space staff, where she was responsible for integrating joint space requirements for all of the services. In her performance report in May of 2025, her leadership noted that she was, and I quote, absolutely phenomenal, and recommended her for a command position. Colonel Fram's records are clear. In her 22 years of service, she upheld both Air Force and Space Force values, excelling in her work and earning opportunities for increased responsibility and leadership. But what her records don't tell you is what her leadership meant to her teammates. So I'll leave you with these words shared by a major on one of those teams. Quote, Colonel Fram leaves behind more than just accomplishments. She leaves a legacy of authenticity and resiliency. She showed those around her that it's possible to serve with excellence while staying true to who you are, and that example is one of the most meaningful contributions a leader can make. Her impact will continue well beyond her time in uniform, and I am so grateful and honored to have served alongside her. Ladies and gentlemen, Colonel Bree Fram.
Will now present the Legion of Merit First Oak Leaf Cluster to Colonel Bree Fram. To all who shall see these presents, greetings. This is to certify that the President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress, July 20th, 1942, has awarded the Legion of Merit First Oak Leaf Cluster to Colonel Bree B. Fram for exceptionally meritorious conduct in the performance of outstanding services from 1 July 2024 to 31 December 2025. Colonel Bree B. Fram distinguished herself by exceptionally meritorious conduct in the performance of outstanding service to the United States as Chief, Requirements Integration Division, Integration Directorate, Deputy Chief of Space Operation, Strategy, Plans, Programs, and Requirements, the Pentagon, Washington, District of Columbia, from 1 July 2024 to 31 December 2025. During this period, Colonel Fram led the creation of Space Force unique policy and process for developing capability requirements, including the publication of the first ever Space Force Guidance Memorandum on Operational Capability Requirements. Her efforts built the Space Force requirements process, pushed execution authorities to the field, and ensured the Deputy Chief of Space Operations had the appropriate oversight of the entire space portfolio. She remade the Air Force legacy process for requirements validation by cutting an oversight council and reducing the coordination timeline by months. Colonel Fram oversaw the development and submission of Space Force input to congressional reports that could lead to a fundamental reshaping of how the Department of Defense manages requirements and capability development. Bree also led the first ever Space Force Requirements Summit, bringing together component field commands and staff agencies to identify capability gaps and propose pathways to capability delivery. Additionally, she published an integrated space-based sensing and targeting capability delivery document that will ensure synchronized effects between the services and the intelligence community that close long-range kill change for combatant commands. Furthermore, she co-led the Joint Space Requirements Integration Cell, ensuring the Chief of Space Operations role as the Joint Space Integrator for the Armed Forces was aligned with the Joint Staff's authority to validate capability requirements. Finally, Bree built a digital requirements ecosystem to enable model-based systems engineering across capability development and the force design process. The singularly distinctive accomplishments of Colonel Fram culminate in a distinguished career in the service of her country and reflect great credit upon herself and the United States Space Force. By order of the Secretary of the Air Force, Colonel Bree Fram stands retired as of January 1st, 2026.
afternoon is beautiful and absurd. We gathered to honor 5 decorated military careers at the very moment our country forced us out of the uniforms we were honored to wear. Retirement ceremonies are supposed to be about closure, about a job well done, a chapter gracefully ending, and often a promise to slow down and finally give our families the time they deserve. I wish I could give that speech. My wife and kids are more than do their flowers. They've moved, waited, worried, and held things together through deployment and extended TDYs, late nights, and the constant uncertainty of military life. They have sacrificed time and time again. And today, instead of promising them a quieter life, I'm about to ask them to sacrifice one more time, because my story and our story isn't finished. In October 2024, I sat down with my mom, who's here along with my dad today, at a picnic table on the coast of Maine. As we watched the waves roll in, the first thing she asked me was not, "How are you?" or "What's next?" She looked at me the way only a mother can and said, "What's your plan to flee?" At that moment, more than $200 million was being spent on presidential campaign ads, which told our country that people like those of us on this stage were a threat, that our very existence was something to fear. My mom wasn't talking about politics. She was thinking about history, our history. My great-grandfather Ludwig fought for Imperial Germany in World War I. He was a highly decorated hero, an Iron Cross first-class recipient. My great-grandmother Paula lost all but one of her brothers in that war. Their roots in Germany were deep. Ludwig believed his service would protect him, even as a Jew. When brown shirt thugs held him at gunpoint and tore through his hotel, he believed his uniform and his record would keep his family safe. It didn't. The illusion shattered when 2 people were found hanging from a pole on his block, both naked, one Jewish, one Christian, with a sign underneath that said, "This is what happens when you pollute the Aryan race." That was the moment it became undeniable. It was time to go. Thanks to a narrow window opened by the Berlin Olympics, Ludwig and Paula grabbed their young son, Fred, boarded a train to Paris in the middle of the night, and fled. The next day, the SS came to the hotel they had just departed to arrest them. They were among the lucky few Jewish refugees allowed into the United States. That's the story that was echoing in my mom's mind when she asked, "What's your plan to flee?" She was afraid that my faith in my uniform would blind me the way it had blinded Ludwig. That I would believe my medals, my rank, and my 23 years of service could somehow protect me, my trans kiddo, and my community, right up until the moment they didn't. In a sense, she was right to worry, but she was wrong about my answer. I didn't grow up expecting to wear a uniform at all. On one side of my family, I can trace American military service back to the Revolution and government service back to a member of Virginia's House of Burgesses in the 1650s. On the other sides, to refugees who arrived with nothing and gave everything when democracy needed them. My grandfather Paul, the child of immigrants and refugees from Ukraine and Latvia, served as an Army Signal Corps officer in World War II. Twice he found himself behind enemy lines. Twice he used courage and guile to convince German units to surrender, once holding several thousand prisoners of war with 20 of his own men for 2 days until the rest of the army arrived. My grandfather Fred, Ludwig's son, raised his right hand the moment he was old enough. He asked to be sent back to Europe because he knew the evil that needed to be stopped. He became the youngest first sergeant in the European theater, earned 2 Bronze Stars, and turned down a battlefield commission for valor so he could stay with his soldiers. I grew up believing they had finished the fight. Nazism was a relic. We had won the Cold War. A Pax Americana stretched out before us. I thought my job was to enjoy the freedom they had already secured. Thanks to Star Trek, I had a different kind of uniform in mind. One to help us find new frontiers in the stars. I wanted to be an aerospace engineer, maybe an astronaut. I graduated college in 2001, ready to launch into that future. Then, on September 11th, I woke up to falling towers and a Pentagon in flames. In an instant, I learned what so many generations before me had already known. Freedom is not self-sustaining. It is not inevitable. It requires people again and again who are willing to stand up and say, if not me, then who? After a long bureaucratic slog and more lost paperwork than I care to remember, I raised my right hand and swore the oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. At my commissioning, my grandfather Fred was there. He gave me my first salute. His smile was so big you could see it from orbit. His grandchild in the United States military uniform. That mattered to him in a way I still didn't fully understand. Afterwards, we went back to his hotel room. He handed me a box. I opened it and found one of his Bronze Stars mounted in a frame with a quote. Courage does not always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet voice at the end of a difficult day which says, I will do my best again tomorrow. There's photographic evidence that when he gave me this, I looked confused. I didn't yet grasp the honor or the wisdom he was handing me. I was also terrible at receiving gifts. I still am today. But the people in this room who have worn the uniform know exactly what that quote means. They know what it is to get knocked down and stand back up anyway. To attend the briefing, lead the patrol, mentor the airman or soldier the next day, no matter what happened the day before. They know what it is to be that quiet voice that says, I will do my best again tomorrow. And the transgender service members in this room know that better than most. If you are a trans service member or veteran, I'm going to ask you to do something that may feel uncomfortable. I'm going to ask you to stand for a moment. Please stand if you are a trans veteran or service member. Look around this room. These are people who deployed, commanded, innovated, fixed what was broken, and made the mission happen. People who met every standard we set and then raised it. People who came out, stayed in, and proved over and over that our readiness, our discipline, our character were assets to this institution, not threats. They have lived the story of doing their very best day after day in a system that keeps telling them they were the problem. They are not the problem. They are the proof the problem lies elsewhere. Thank you, each and every one of you who had the courage to don the uniform and do your very best every day. I cry that our military service ended this way, but I'm so damn proud that it happened, and of all of you, thank you. Please be seated. For me, and I know for many of us, it was the military itself that gave me the tools and courage to become the best version of myself. The discipline, the community, the sense of purpose. It all gave me the strength to come out, to transition, and to serve authentically. And when I did, something incredible happened. My performance improved. My teams thrived. My colleagues had my back. Nothing illustrates this better than my last meeting with the Joint Staff. Because the Space Force is so small, we often send someone 1 or 2 ranks below the other services to meetings. So I found myself in a room full of admirals and generals, last in line as we went around the room for closing comments. After a work-related update, I shared that it would be my last meeting, and I didn't know when the Space Force would have a permanent replacement. The officer next to me smiled and asked, "Oh, what new assignment did you get?" I told him I didn't have a new assignment, just that I didn't meet this administration's standard for military excellence and readiness, which was the title of the executive order that labeled transgender service members as dishonorable, undisciplined liars who lack the humility required for military service. It took a moment for that to sink in. And then, in a scene that mirrored what happened 9 years earlier when I first came out as trans, but this time tinged with the sadness of past tense, a room full of admirals and generals stood up, walked over to me, shook my hand, and said, "It's been an honor to have served with you." I made it to the hallway before the sniffles became a torrent of tears, because it was the honor of a lifetime to serve alongside the people in that room. Because they knew the truth of who I was and what I brought to the fight. And that truth stood in direct conflict with what the policy said about people like me. That's the absurdity that we're living in and you are witnessing today. Not a theoretical debate, a room full of senior leaders saying, "You have been an asset to this nation," while the policy says, "You are the problem, you are unwanted, you are unneeded." Over 23 years, I learned what my grandfather was trying to tell me with that bronze star and his quote about courage. I learned how to change dreams and pivot when life or fate or policy closed a door. From the tiny cut in the back of my eye that ended my hopes of becoming an astronaut, just as I applied to flight test school, to the rare form of cancer that nearly took the uniform from me a few years ago, to the surreal period of living in limbo, wondering when or whether a policy written by people who feared what we represented would finally push us out. Every single time, I was carried forward by love and leadership from my family at home and my family in uniform. But there is one thing I was never taught in my 23 years of service. I don't think anyone in this room was. None of us were ever taught how to surrender. We were taught how to retreat and regroup, how to act under pressure, how to find another way to accomplish our mission. But we were never taught how to quit on our country, our values, or each other. We got knocked down. We got back up. We did our best again tomorrow. A few years ago, when Fred passed, his last words were to me as I squeezed his hand tightly. He was so proud. He told me, "Keep doing what you're doing." With that charge, there is no way I could ever let him down. It was the courage to keep going. As our time in uniform ends, for now, evidence of that courage is everywhere. The retirees you've heard from today have left an extraordinary record of service. Commands led, lives saved, systems built, units transformed. And what you've heard this afternoon is just the tip of the iceberg for what trans service members have done for this nation. We have blazed trails, sometimes at great personal cost, so that others could follow on solid ground instead of through a minefield of policies that said we were broken or monsters. We step away knowing that we will not be the last, knowing we have proven beyond any honest doubt that we belong. But there's one more thing. Our oaths do not retire when we do. Our oath is not to a uniform, a service, or a particular administration. It is to the Constitution of the United States of America. For every service member, there comes a day when the uniform comes off. For some, it's when they pay the ultimate price. For most, it's when they decide the time is right to move on to a new form of service. We were denied the dignity of choosing that moment. Our uniforms are not coming off because we failed in our duty, but because we did it so well that the blazing starfire of what it represented could not be hidden away. But taking off the uniform is not the same as walking away from the fight. We may be done with our military service, but we are not done serving. So when my mom asked me, "What's your plan to flee?" I thought about Ludwig and Paula and that midnight train to Paris. I thought about the people who did what they had to do to survive. And I said, "Mom, I plan to stay and fight. This is my country too, and I want it to survive." Staying and fighting looks a lot different now. I know my uniform won't protect me, but if the courage it gave me can help me stand and fight for others, it sure did its job. Now, it means showing up in our communities to defend the values we swore to uphold. It means standing with our kids, especially queer and trans kids, so they don't grow up in a country where they have to ask if there's a train or a plane they need to be on before it's too late. America should be a beacon to refugees, not a source of them. Our fight means telling the truth about who we are and what we've done for this nation again and again until the policies catch up to the reality. It means being the quiet voice at the end of a very long day in American democracy, which says, "We will do our best again tomorrow." To my wife and our kids, I know this is not the retirement you deserved. You deserve more time, more safety, more certainty than I can promise today. But I also know we share a belief that this country is worth the work, that the freedoms we enjoy are worth defending, that no child should have to wonder whether their country has room for them. Thank you for letting me serve this long, and thank you in advance for standing by me as I trade one uniform for another kind of service. Our combat boots may be at rest, but we are not. We are simply lacing up for a different battlefield, one where the weapons are words, votes, organizing, and relentless hope. One where the mission is to make sure the America my grandparents fled to is not lost on our watch. This is our country too. It has always been our country. It's worth fighting for. And together, we will do our best again tomorrow. Thank you.
Today, we honored the profound depth of service represented on this stage. We witnessed the impact of lives lived with courage, authenticity, and unwavering dedication to the mission and to the people who carried it out. But there comes a moment in every military career when words give way to tradition. The rituals that have marked generations of service members become the language that speaks for us. These traditions are not mere formalities. They are symbols of promises kept, a duty fulfilled, and a legacy secured. They remind us that the nation that these five defended is better because they were here. And so as their time in military service reaches an abrupt end, not of their choosing, we turn to the honors which mark the transition, honors that belong to them because of what their service earned. We begin now with the ceremonial portion of today's program, the sheathing of the sword, the reading of the watch, the presentation of the flags, and the final piping ashore. Each is a tribute to a career of consequence. Each is a reminder that although their active service ends, their impact endures. I'll now ask General McChrystal and Sergeant First Class Schmidt to move to the front. In 1840, the War Department adopted the Model 1840 Non-Commissioned Officer Sword, a weapon designed for function rather than display. For over 70 years, American sergeants wore it through campaigns of the Mexican-American War, Civil War, and Spanish-American War. The sword embodies the NCO's duty to maintain good order and discipline, as well as to care for soldiers. In ceremony, it stands as a symbol of the power, strength, and enduring fidelity of the NCO Corps. Sergeant Schmidt will now retire her weapon.
Sir, request permission to retire my weapon.
Prepare for inspection.
At this time, Sergeant First Class Schmidt is presenting her weapon for final inspection, signifying the formal relinquishment of her duties and her gratitude for the privilege of service in the profession of arms.
Retire your sword.
Thank you, sir.
I now invite our joint service team to read the watch. Retiring members, please stand.
For over a combined 100 years, these Americans have stood the watch. While some of us were in our bunks at night, they stood the watch.
While some of us were in school learning our trade, they stood the watch. Yes, even before some of us were born into this world, these Americans stood the watch. In those years, when the storm clouds of war were seen brewing on the horizon of history, they stood the watch.
Many times, they would cast an eye home and their family standing there, needing their guidance and help, needing that hand to hold during those hard times, but they still stood the watch.
They stood the watch together. They stood the watch so that we, our families, our fellow countrymen, could sleep soundly in safety each and every night, knowing that these Americans stood the watch.
Today, we are here to say, though not of your choice, your watch stands relieved. Relieved by those who have trained, guided, and led, these Americans stand relieved.
We have the watch.
boys, post. Chief Petty Officer Jada McGuire, United States Coast Guard, departing. Sergeant First Class Catherine Schmid, United States Army, departing. Lieutenant Colonel Arian Krizik, United States Air Force, departing. Commander Blake Drummond, United States Navy, departing. Colonel Bree Fram, United States Space Force, departing. Side boys, left, right face. Side boys, post. This concludes today's joint retirement ceremony. On behalf of our retirees, thank you for sharing this moment with them. Please join them for a reception in my right of the room.